Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Money King YouTube channel, and today we have some special guests with us. We have Davey from Flux, and we have Mr. Daniel Keller, and I believe it's Tad, right? The
Today-ish.
That
trunk.
is fine. Yes.
The trunk.
It's easier for me to pronounce that than.
Indeed. Let's go by that.
And we also have Retro Mike with us as well. So thank you everybody for joining me on the call today. I guess we're just gonna get right into it. The first question is with the recent announcement of the port range being extended, what was the driving factor for requiring a full port range to be available on every node?
Well, I can start out by saying that any of the changes that we make with Flux are very well researched and very well documented, and they're also working with customers, potential customers, and people that are lining up to run on the infrastructure, which we've had exponential growth over the past several months. So, I mean, none of these changes are taken half-heartedly. And as a matter of fact, in our cab, you go through 4 or 5 evaluations of whether or not that's something we want to push to the chain or not. And then we ultimately make that decision. But I'll let Tadeusz continue on why, or the technicals of why. But the answer to your question is because we have turned away customers currently that required, including Davis Consulting and others, that need to be able to use those ports, need to be able to use that infrastructure. So bottom line is Flux nodes were configured originally and will continue to be configured originally for entry-level deployments, for websites, front ends, back ends, so on and so forth. But we also need to make sure that if we want to have this enterprise infrastructure, we have to have the requirements and tools available. So Tadeusz, you can finish up explaining that as well.
Yeah. So we need to be able to host entire set of applications, which is simply not accomplishable with just a limited port range. As some apps, such as DNS servers, some games, they require a specific port to function properly. So to extend our port range to the entire scope is purely natural and inevitable expansion of Flux per se. And we kind of must treat every node on the network the same way. So every node on the network must be able to run any application. Yeah, that would be great.
But we had actually instances of, as a business developer, it's my job to go out to businesses and reach out and find points where we can work together. And I actually, like Dan said, we actually had to turn down a few folks, big folks.
Yeah.
to that basically said, okay, we like what you're doing, except you're making us make big changes on our code base for it to work all together. And Davey, we can't do that. Like, there needs to be, we want to use your application, but for us to do that, we have to put a lot of dollars in, euros in, to make this happen. That's not going to happen. And so we can't. I went back to the team. So this one.
I want to address something, King, that you had in your recent video.
Sure.
Essentially, I think one of the points that you tried to convey, or concerns that you had to convey, is that we were pushing out the normal everyday node operators, and Flux isn't for everyone. And this isn't a turnkey project where you're not you set it and forget it. We are working toward enterprise infrastructure across the board. So some people will be pushed out of that because maybe they don't have the knowledge or the prowess to run these nodes. There are other applications that we'll be running, such as the Cirrus nodes and proof of use of work, that are allow for like that almost one-click deployment scenario. But make no mistake, these nodes are built for enterprise, and that's just the way it is. So I wanted to address that because I think that, when you made the statement about us, possibly, you compared our bull market numbers, which are 15,000 plus nodes, to our bear market numbers, which is 12,500. I think what you have is logical people who have remained in the infrastructure and will continue to keep doing it. It just blows my mind that people will spend god-awful hours and resources building mining rigs, but seriously get pissed off if they have to buy like a real router, to run this drug, or set up a fucking VLAN, or do things that we as network technicians have done forever. So, I don't know. I'm not, upset about it or anything, but I think it was misleading when you made that statement, because we're exactly the opposite. We want to be completely inclusive of all users. We built Titan. We've getting ready to deploy proof of use of work, which can run on any PC anywhere. We're expanding the Cirrus nodes, which are our off-chain node structure for edge compute and AI. So, I respect you and I respect your videos, but I think that was a little that was a little bit of a red herring in my book.
So, well, to not get off the topic too much, Dan, like, look, man, I love you guys and I love this project. I talk to you guys, well, not the trunk very often. This is my first time meeting him, but I do talk to Davey and everybody at the project a lot. So what I was trying to inform people is people who are at home, maybe who either watch my videos or other YouTubers' videos and make these Flux nodes because they want to make their Flux work for them, that maybe these users who don't have networking skills, right, or even understand some of these things about securing their network, that these would be the people who get pushed out, which I understand your argument, right, that these nodes aren't for just
Not for
everyday
everybody.
Timmys.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Completely understand that. So
if you're heading in that direction, there's plenty of shit coins out there that you can invest in and do one-click staking or NFT deployments. I mean, it is what it is. And like I said, I respect you and I respect your content. But I kind of took offense to that video because I didn't think that I honestly didn't feel like we were given a fair shake. And plus, two, we'd already volunteered to come on and address all these questions, which we're doing right now. So anyway, we won't get off the topic. We'll get back on the topic. But I just wanted to make sure and set the stage before we move forward. Flux is not for everyone. And that's just tough. That's just the way it is. If you're expecting a one-click setup or you're expecting to run this at home and forget about it and never go back to it, it's the wrong fucking project. You're going to have to find another project. It's just the way it is. And I love people being inclusive and being participatory, but that putting in that light where we would eliminate or reduce our home users, the adoption cycle for Flux isn't on the node structure side. They're facilitating infrastructure. The adoption comes from the other side, which is front ends, back ends, websites, companies that want to deploy on Flux. So we have to make those changes on the backside to address the demands on the front side, or there'll be no development. There'll be no mass adoption. We'll just sit there and opine for node operators, and we're not going to do that. So, it's a little rough when you have to say it, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's not for everyone. And if you don't like to learn or you don't like to educate yourself, don't run a fucking Flux node. Simple. That's how I feel about it. But anyway, on to the next question.
Strongly feel about it seems.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, Mike. I do get what you're saying. I'll be the voice of the diplomacy here. I get what you're saying, but Dan's absolutely right. Like this is no joke, right? Like we need to make sure our network is strong, and sometimes you need some folks who are not able to put in the work or not willing to put in the work, because if you do a little bit of research, it's really not that hard. You can go on our Discord, you can go put a support tickets, and we're there to help you out. Like we're willing to help you out to get this going. Folks like yourself and all the other YouTubers, they're working on making content to help you set up these things. You yourself set up videos where you basically go through
excellent videos.
Where you even taught me what was it, the Netgate thing? You even taught me a couple.
The Wonder Shaper to shape your traffic.
Yeah, like there's ways around it, but it's a good exercise. If you don't, it also helps me, and if you help me, that helps the entire community to help sell our product. All of us together, we're basically guiding this company forward, this project forward. We all together need to basically be strong, right? To basically make sure that we have a viable product that we can go to bigger projects or other companies and say, hey, look, we have this solution. And if they ask me, well, Davey, how secure is it? How who's managing these things? If I can say, well, anybody can just one click go and it's fine, it doesn't make a strong case for us. If I say, look, there's a bit of research that you have to do. It's not like 1, 2, 3, go. You have to put the work in to get it up and running. These guys know what they're doing. It's a big selling point. I'll be very honest. It helps.
Right.
So yeah, that's to nuance it a little bit. But that's basically the goal here. Is we've always said it. All of our AMAs, all your streams that I've joined, it's not for everybody. This is not the project that you just spin up the node and you walk away. No, this node does something and it needs to be set proper. Period.
Yeah, we try to
Exactly.
give all the tools that we can give to make it more simplistic. Watchdog, matter of fact, Tech Doofus just went through a spin up piece on his side. I mean,
by the way, not this was not done by us. This was Tag Doofus with some community members building it out.
Yeah. So, the bottom line is, I understand your concern, and what we're trying to address by coming here, and because we don't hide. I mean, it is what it is. And by the way, you could have found out the answer to any one of these questions, and anyone listening who had questions, by just going in and asking the question in Discord, and we would have gladly happily answered it. We're as transparent as it comes. We're not looking to make life hard on anyone, but we are looking to make our network rock solid and secure. And to do those pieces, there will be people that have to leave. It's just the way it is. And, I think probably those 2,000 nodes left over the past several months, I think the yields were down when they were probably running a, Cumulus node or something like that. And, they felt that, in a bear market, you turn it down. So that's just the way it is, and it's the same way with mining. Sometimes you turn the rigs on and sometimes you turn the rigs off, and that's because that's just what makes sense to you. So anyway, we'll go on to your next question.
Has Flux assembled a list of common ports or services that enterprise clients would like to run?
Oh yes, absolutely. So even with the latest FluxOS update, we have stated the enterprise port range that we expect the high usage on, such as HTTP port, such as HTTPS port, DNS port, or some game servers port, right? Like Minecraft, right? So we had a comprehensive list of applications that we expected will be deployed on Flux. And as well, we have a blocked port range, right? That is not allowed to run on Flux, right? Such as like SSH port, right? You don't want this port to be associated with any application. So, and there is many more others. So we had done the research, and I believe it's all set properly.
And on the other hand, like I do understand that some people do run their own infrastructure at home, and there's a reason that they run that infrastructure. They are running their own services. Either it's a different node type or a different project that they're joining, or it's actual IT based things, a web server, email server, whatever you're running at home. So we are cognizant of that as well. So we offer the ability to block ports on your end.
100 of them, Davey.
I think it's 100. Yeah.
Block up to 100 ports.
So
still be fine.
We do offer some flexibility. It's not like, hey, your entire network is not dedicated to Flux. No. We're making sure that you have flexibility, and if we ever get the response back and said, hey, 100 ports is still not sufficient, and we'll, if we get that feedback, I don't know, I haven't really seen it much, but if we do get that feedback, we'll see what we can do on our end. But it's a give and take here, right? So there's a lot of ports being asked for that at this point we couldn't really provide at all, right? That port range that we had has been sufficient for a ton of projects out there, except for we've also ran into roadblocks where it wasn't, so we had to find a solution.
I guess, well, I won't skip around. So question 3 is with Docker container, it actually uses port mapping. With the full port range being completely available, do you guys plan on offering full VPS services with this new port range?
Trunk, you got this one.
Yeah, Flux works differently than renting a VPS. Right? It is currently purely meant to only run containerized applications. So we have yet to experiment with some creation of, let's say, containerized full operating system, such as Ubuntu, or creating some permissionless user. I would not compare Flux to like VPS, but rather to, let's say, Kubernetes. So we manage the overall application, we manage the run of it, the state, how it's getting spawned, shifted to other instances. So it's not for every application, right? This is purely like vastly simplified and way cheaper for simple end users who just want to have their dash node, their node, kernel node running on Flux or some game server or some website, right? This is not for professionals that want some complex VPS stuff. This is for applications.
Yeah, I agree with that. A VPS by itself is just an empty shell, right? At that point, you start
Right.
installing software, or you go if we're thinking Ubuntu or Linux versions, you start setting up screens and different services running on it. The idea of it would be become tricky as well. Like, how would we do that on a technology level as well? Like, how do you move that VPS from A to B to C? Right? Keep in mind, you get 3 instances. This is more of a containerized environment. Literally, the container can be picked up, put on a different node, and service keeps on going. With a VPS, you would actually have to containerize that VPS environment and then pick it up and go. You in theory, you could have Ubuntu running on it, but I don't know if that is the end goal here for us. There's better solutions for that. I'm
I
not saying.
think the I probably wrote this question wrong, but to me it's just
Oh,
like,
that's fine.
since Docker container uses port mapping, I guess.
Yeah.
Why couldn't you just use the port mapping for all the ports that you wanted, that they wanted to do anyways?
Very good question. And I actually had that discussion with with an enterprise customer that was looking at us, and I said, "Look, we can do these ports. You just have to reach us on a different port, and that's where it's difficult. If we want to be a piece of the puzzle in their environment, they're using a certain port, right? They're using a port 500, a port 600, or whatever they picked. Instead of having them overhaul their entire infrastructure, they want to straight away use that port and then hook us in and go from there.
Okay.
That's their reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
We have had other customers who were willing to change the ports and fit it into the range that we provided to them, but others are a little bit different thinking, and again, we're doing a bridge here. We're bridging from your old Web 2 thinking into Web 3 thinking. It's
Right.
it's on us to help them make that journey, and if it makes us easier accessible by just listening to their requirements or ports, it's a quick win. Simple as that.
Yeah. And there are some applications that have just standardized ports, right? Imagine DNS server, right? You can now deploy your own DNS server on Flux, right? Which requires kind of port 53 to be open and fully operational. But you can run your own DNS server on Flux, which is kind of amazing, right? Your own
Yeah.
domain being managed on decentralized infrastructure, right? And also like emails, you can deploy your SMTP server, right? And be your own email provider. This was not possible before with the limited port range.
Which
Now
were
it
things
is.
the community was asking for, by the way, not just enterprise level folks. Community folks were asking, "Hey, I want to run an email server." Yeah, you can, except we're not on that same port, guys. So you might have issues getting emails. That makes us useless.
Right.
So that's part of the reason. But I get the port mapping. I had that conversation with a couple folks. I'm like, hey, we can use that port in your in the application in the Docker itself, no issue. Just comment on this range. And like, no, simple, no. Okay.
Yeah,
And
this
and the
was the
discussion.
initial restriction of Flux, right? Why Flux had the limited port range, because we thought it will be sufficient, but it's not.
Completely understandable. Appreciate all you guys' answers.
No, we're giving you the feedback too. Like the things that I
Yeah.
got, like I'm
From
in meetings nonstop, right? So it and I'm the one who gets all this feedback, and then it's me with the pitchforks that goes after Tadeas and other developers. I'm like, I need this, and then this is not a overnight decision. I've been asking this, Dan. How long I've been asking for some of these things? A year, for some of these things.
Too long.
I'm that nagging
No.
cogwheel. That's like, I need
Yeah.
this.
Right. This
I
is
need
this
it.
is what your customer wants, right? The people that the customers that you guys are trying to attract to your project,
Yeah.
and you're going back to your team, right? You're going back to Trunk and saying, "Hey, I need this." So, um, definitely can
And
understand
this
that.
is good. Like I get shut down a few times here and there, more than I like, but it's fine. But a lot of the things that FluxOS is doing, and that Trunk and the team, that they've been doing an amazing job on listening to the feedback that I bring back from customers. A lot of the changes that have been done in the last year, the progress that we made has been phenomenal. Just same thing. Say what you want. You'll see sometimes your watchdog freak out, async thing is not running properly, blah blah blah. But all of these pieces have made our product, for us, the community, our product has become so much more usable for anybody out there to use. And this is the next step. And the more we do these things, the more we challenge ourselves to find these solutions, the better we all be. And this is the bear market. This is the time to really work on it, to build on this. Will we stumble here and there? Maybe, but it's not bad. These are really the things we need to tackle. So I'm happy to see the progress so far. And sorry, Trunk, for nagging constantly.
All right, go ahead,
That
Retro
is
Mike. I
good.
think the next one's yours.
Yeah. So currently, one of the things I really like about Flux is it being containerized based, and it allows you to essentially deploy any Docker image you want onto the network. The next question I have is, at a high level, what checks, balances, audits do you perform when whitelisting a Docker image to be used?
Mhm. Yeah, so the whitelist is in place as kind of the first barrier that cuts the scamming applications, the malicious applications that can be deployed on the network. So, but there are other barriers, right? Such as blacklisting, monitoring, and so on. But before we whitelist an image, there is like a questionnaire that the user or application deployer needs to submit, and there are some checks that it's not malicious, right? It doesn't run some minors, it doesn't run some illegal pornography per se, or some scams. So usually the whitelist happens on the entire organization that you have on Docker Hub, or you can have it on AWS or Google. We allow multiple Docker container repositories. So we need to go through the images, and that's done manually, that are being deployed. Usually the application deployer helps us, right? I want to run this application, and we want this application. So firstly, we run it on our own node. We try to pull it, run it, and we observe the networking and observe the resources, right? And we can also inspect what's kind of in the image if it's not open source. So that way we can quickly say, oh, there's no miner. The website is not a scam website. There is no bandwidth mining. We had any issues with bandwidth mining a couple months ago. So those are the checks we do manually.
You have to also keep in mind, it's we're not going through your code base. We're not going to go. We're just have a quick glance on it. Folks like partners that we have, that we work with today, they provide you the VPS, and off you go, and you run your thing. They don't preemptively check your things. We do it a little bit to kind of help you guys, the node operators, as well, to make sure nothing really bad happens on your end. But we can't prevent everything. So we do our due diligence in that regard, that we look at your Docker Hub. What have you done in the past? Is there any red flags? No. That helps us out. we're just making sure, as we're learning, we're just trying to safeguard you guys at the same time. That's a good question.
Okay, and then kind of to go along with that is once a Docker image is whitelisted, we know that as a developer of that Docker image, whoever that owner is, at any time they can make changes to that.
Yep.
Right. The end user, I believe, has to initiate a soft redeploy. Is that correct? In order to get the updated image, or wait for it to get deployed to a different node. Regardless, are there any type of recurring analysis or checks being done on updates to those Docker images to make sure there's not a vulnerability that may impact the Flux network?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, and we had these issues in the past, right? User submits an whitelist for an image, and in the end, he changes to usually minors, right? Which is not something we can allow on a network. So for the reoccurring checks, those are purely automated. We can't do it manually like we do the initial whitelist because simply of the number of images that are already deployed, right? So we can't check manually every change to images. So those checks are done automatically by our systems, by FluxOS itself, and also by third-party applications. Like you can find many tools that we give array of images and they go and if there is some bad code in the images. But yeah, then we rely on reports. That's the biggest sketch that user of some application or the node operator reports to us, hey, this application has unusually high CPU usage. That's the biggest sketch.
Yeah, I'll step in on that one as well. Like going back to our very first question, right, with all the ports being opened, blah blah blah. Because of that, the folks who are running these nodes are so much stronger in the knowledge on how Flux nodes work. They know how to work their machines. They know how to work their operating systems. They're also very cognizant of things that are changing in their environment, or hey, why is this thing all of a sudden using so much bandwidth? Why am I seeing a huge amount of influx of data coming in? And they start looking and verifying it, what a system administrator does. So it's a good thing that they're kind of trained to do the job, right? So with that, we've seen it in the past, and a few times we have folks coming into Discord and say, hey, I've noticed this particular application doing something awkward. Can you guys look into it? And then 9 out of 10, it's legit. It's legit. But sometimes we do stumble on something, and then it's a quick thing, blacklisted, done. And a blacklist goes really fast, right?
Let me expand on that a little bit more too. Currently, we're in the process of working on Sentinel nodes, which will do some real-time monitoring as well for these things. I mean, we're not even close to doing the tools and analytics that we want to make sure that we put on the network. So that'll be a big thing there with the Sentinel nodes. And the other thing we're working on is reporting structure for the node operators. So if they see something that's using a shit ton of bandwidth or something that just might not be right, you can easily hit a one-click report and it goes back to the team. The team looks at it, verifies it's okay, and boom, off we go. So I mean, we're going to rely. Yeah, we're essentially going to be rating these applications as they hit with the Sentinel nodes, basically watching the network to make sure that there's nothing nefarious going on. I mean, these are all pieces we're working on and pieces that are going to make the network even stronger yet.
Oh, okay. Looking forward to that then. Nice.
And these are concerns, right? The questions you're asking, Mike, and these are questions that I ask on development calls as well. So we have those concerns. I get those questions even from customers too. Like, how do we do this? Like, how am I certain that I'm safe? Well, keep in mind as well, you're in a container at the same time. It's not easy to just go in from one container into the other, but still, we want to make sure that everybody's safe, who's providing, but also who's using the network. So this is we got a team just doing this stuff, going through these whitelists and blacklists, and at the same time going through the applications and do spot checking But we also rely on everybody on the school who runs nodes and everybody in the community who runs nodes to report anything they see that's that looks awkward.
Right.
Doesn't mean
reporting
there's
it.
something bad, but report it, and we can focus on it basically, and double check if everything's still okay.
If you do find an issue with a image that was previously whitelisted, are you blacklisting that specific tag and still allowing the previous version to be deployed? Or are you blacklisting the image altogether?
It's a good question.
Well,
currently,
go ahead. Today,
currently we blacklisted all. The
Yep.
application developer clearly violated the terms, right? He put something malicious on the network, which is not allowed, and not even that we can blacklist the image itself. From time to time, we whitelist the deployer address as well, so he can't deploy another malicious application. So it depends case by case. There isn't that many blacklists, right? If you go through the array, there is like 10 applications that were ever blacklisted. So it's all manually.
It also puts a little bit of ownership on whoever is deploying his applications to make sure whatever he or she is doing is okay, right? So think about what you're doing, testing it out, making sure you've done your checks and balances before you deploy it on the network. What we're doing,
or as I like to say, fuck around and find out.
Or you can do that and try it out, and which people have done. Like there's people who are doing it, and not always for bad reasons. They just want to see how far they can go.
We learn.
And
I mean, these folks that are deploying shit, I mean, it's, people look at it as nefarious, and they are, black hat hackers. I mean, essentially, because they're doing this shit. But every time somebody does something like that, we get a little stronger. So, having people push the limits of the project is exactly what we want, and we're in that trying to learn everything, improve everything stage. Eventually it'll move to more of a support model as we continue our network growth. But yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have those people that are testing it and trying to break it so we can find it and fix it.
Right, exactly. Yep, building on top of everything. How will Flux deal with port collision, or is this not a concern?
Oh, this is already handled in Flux.
Yeah.
So no port collision can basically happen. So the nodes precisely know what ports are being used on the node itself. Not only on the node itself, but on the same IP, right? Because we allow up to 8 nodes on the same IP. So if one node on the IP address using port 30,000, no other node on the same IP address can use port 30,000.
Pre-search taught us that.
Yeah, thanks, pre-search.
Thanks. But yeah, and we ran into that quickly too because of our limited port range, right? So and if a certain application becomes really popular, well then, and they use that one port, then yeah, we run into that issue. So we've been that problem's been fixed a long time ago.
So along those lines, Davey, do node ops have the ability to, I'm going to say blacklist, but do they have the ability to blacklist specific Docker images that they don't want to be deployed on their own nodes? So as a node op, let's say I'm already running a pre-search node on my home network, and I still want to provide services to Flux, but I don't want a pre-search node to be deployed to any of my Flux nodes. Is that currently an option, or is there a plan for that?
Blacklisting on a provider is not an option at this moment, right? It is?
Not at this moment, but it's very planned. It will be available soon. Yeah. So you will have the option to blacklist an image or application or application hash. So lots of offerings.
And you can block a port as well.
Yeah, that's currently possible.
Is there, I guess, to lead on to another question, is there any ports? Because I remember there being 100 ports, but are there any ports that specifically you are not allowed to put inside that 100?
That's a good question.
No, node operator can put any port they want to be blacklisted. So we didn't limit the ports you can't blacklist, but it's a maximum of 100 individual ports that you can blacklist.
Okay. I was just wondering if there was some kind of limitations of like what ports that they wouldn't be allowed to blacklist, other than the ones that you guys are already using right now currently for Flux nodes. But
Is it 100 per IP or 100 per node hosted?
Per node.
Okay, so if I'm running 8 nodes at home, technically I can blacklist 800 ports.
Well, 100 per node, right? So if you blacklist some other port on different node, the previous node that you didn't blacklist it on can run it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's
So
blacklisted in the configuration file of Flux, not like on your.
it's not accumulating.
Right, it's
one.
not at the network level. It's at the
It's at the node
the
level.
OS layer.
Yeah, at the server level.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to node level, because you might be running Proxmox and
Yeah.
I'll correct myself, because otherwise I will have people yelling at me. Well, I'm running 2 on.
Well, they're
my
going to
server.
yell at you anyway,
Oh,
Davey.
they
It's
do.
It's fun as hell.
You do.
I love it.
Today's does. Everybody yells at Davey. My wife does. Good questions. I'm keep them coming.
All right, the next question that I have is more around data being stored, especially with like Flux Drive and just nodes in general. Is that data encrypted? And in addition to that, is it split out, meaning is it encrypted and then split out and distributed across multiple nodes so not one single entity would have full access to that data, encrypted or otherwise?
Like essentially sharding is what you're asking about.
Correct,
Sharding
yes.
the data.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to let Tadeusz cut loose on this, but I want to put an asterisk before he gets into it. And that is all encryption on the Flux network is by the people that are deploying the infrastructure. So if I have a project and I'm deploying it on Flux, the encryption is my responsibility, not the network's responsibility. We do use IPFS for the data set, right? So it is basically, if you know how IPFS works, it does kind of shard the data, so to speak. And we do multiple deployments. But make no mistake, there is no encryption at that base level. That is up to the individuals deploying the application. So in other words, if I go to AWS and I order VPS and I drop a whole shit ton of data, it's not their job to encrypt that data at rest. And we are basically an open source blockchain. So yeah, you have to take that into consideration when you're doing a deployment. Tadeusz, you can expand on that, and if I messed anything up, fix it.
Yeah, that's a good emphasis.
Fix it.
A good emphasis too. It's not broken, so I can't fix it. But Dan said it right? It's the application developer responsibility to preserve and encrypt the data that they want to have encrypted at all times. Yeah. It's not our task. But I will add to it that with the latest update, like this couple of months ago, we have added so-called like enterprise nodes, where we score those nodes based on uptime, their collateralization, then the public keys, the kind of known person who kind of runs the node status. And so you have the ability to deploy private images on the Flux node, right? You have to select those enterprise nodes, and you manually choose and review on what actual node you want to run your application. So if you happen to run a Flux node, you can choose that I want my application to be run only on my Flux nodes, right? And at this stage, you kind of can trust yourself. So nobody else can run and spawn your private application but yourself. However, FluxOS should be completely treated as public infrastructure and accessible to anyone. So
yeah, I know, right? So accessible to certain node operators, and your data itself, depending on your use case, right? So if you're working on a website and you want to use Flux Drive for that, and you want to put images on there, NFTs on there, certain things you want to have available to the public. So you don't want to encrypt them, but if you use them in a software and you want to store things there, it's always good practice, regardless, to have them encrypted from your end first, so that your hosting service can't even properly access them. The same question goes to an Amazon. They're not encrypting anything either. You go to Google, they're not encrypting anything either. It's, if you don't encrypt it, it's there. You're the only one who can access it. From the front end, they can access it too, by the way, on the back end. So you have to be careful with that. I've had those discussions with big companies in France
Yeah.
and such, and they were like, "Wait, what? But we have a contract with them. They can't do it." It's like, yeah. I I wish I had framed it. I literally got a letter from a package delivery system provider, and I actually almost fell for it. By the way, they basically had a data breach. They didn't. Their provider did, and their provider, a big one, denied it. But it was one of their employees basically who took the data and provided it to a nefarious person, and then started texting people. It's a slippery slope, but
Right.
I always, and in my IT day job as well, if we were using the cloud, it was encrypted before it left the facility. No, that's always on the person using the data. You encrypt it first. You do not rely on anyone else, because if you rely on the provider providing it, they have the keys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they can shut your ass off too if they want.
Yeah, that too.
Right.
That's
So-
what makes Flux powerful as well.
So you have to be careful with that. Like I get the notion, but we're always very quick to say, "I'll let him take care of it," and then I'm safe. It's we're in crypto. We should all know better. If it's not your keys, it's not your data, right? It's not your If it's not your keys, it's not your wallet. We own the keys. You own the keys. So make sure, if you use the software, if you're relying on a cloud source, you encrypt it first before you send it out to the cloud. It's a lesson learned.
To go along with that, with the enterprise rollout,
Mhm.
is Flux implementing data residency?
Data residency in terms of that the data is stored always on the particular node or
In a
some region?
specific region, or so I've worked on projects in the past where the data had to reside within a single state in the United
Yep.
States that
That's
wasn't even
geo.
allowed. Go ahead. Dan.
Geolocation.
That's geolocations. We've had geolocations for the better part of I don't know, 8 months, maybe more, maybe a year. So, and we actually drilled down, Mike, so that we could address those concerns. We wanted to make sure if somebody wants to deploy something and be regulatory compliant on Flux, that they can do it. So if they want to exclude the US or a particular region, and we can drill all the way down to the state if you'd like. So that, I mean, and that really, honestly, that protects us as much as it protects the end users, so that they can make sure that the onus is on them to be regulatory compliant across the board. So deploy, if you don't care where the nodes are going to be spawned, you said spawn them anywhere, they just go anywhere, right? So if it's a website or something, you don't really care, you just send it out. But if I have a game server, or if I have low latency, low ping time, has to be, I don't want to run a game server in Europe and sit here in the US and try to play a game. I want to deploy it in the US. And as a matter of fact, deploy it regionally, East Coast, West Coast, North, South, whatever. So yeah, yes, that is in place and it works fantastic. We, as a matter of fact, one of our larger customers just got into doing some locations, geofencing as well. So
It's actually even as a European. Well, I'm a Canadian now, but as a European, I had to work around European laws. Good old European Union. They're very, very. There's a certain compliance you have to follow, but basically they make you, if you use data from a European user, and the European user is saying, I want to basically only use it in Europe, you have to provide it that it's only in Europe available, or at least stored in Europe. That doesn't. You have to be careful, but they're a little skewy on how they actually present it, but you have to make sure that the data is at least stored in Europe. If you put it on a website, at that point, it's worldwide. There's nothing you can do. Although there's people who have put in barriers on the website level. So the ownership at that point becomes, again, on he or she who's coding the front end to make that happen. We can only be as compliant as whatever people set and how they use our infrastructure. We do provide the tools that if you want to use it only in Europe, you can. You want to use it in North America, you can. But if your software or your website does not prevent it going into Europe or into the US, at that point we can't do anything. We can't block traffic. That again is on whoever deploys it or a Docker.
So I guess
Okay.
leading into that, we're going to get into with GDPR in place
That's
in
the
Europe
one.
in the EU and the UK. How is Flux going to manage this with the fact of people expecting to run nodes? How does Flux plan to deal with data protection and how the GDPR
So
works and stuff like that?
yeah, we're basically GDPR compliant. Thank you, King, because I forgot the terminology. We're basically GDPR compliant simply because we're not processing your data. We have no interest in doing that. We don't even want to touch it. That where's my business card? Don't be evil again. That's not our thing. We don't want to touch it. No, not us.
But that does not exclude the individuals that are deploying. They still are regulatory compliant in the areas that they are. So yeah, they have to, that end use. So you have to really think of. Go ahead.
Yeah. So GDPR is basically there's a couple things in there. There's personal data. There's a controller, processor. There was a fourth one, processing. So we're in those four terms. We're the processor. We're the provider, basically. So we have data, or there is data on our network, but we don't do anything with that data. And if we do data, have data that other people touch, which we're quite open about it, right? Let's be very clear. We're very open about it, that it's a node operator running your application. That's always in every presentation. That's on our websites like that. That's very clear. So we're quite open about it. So we're pretty compliant on that piece as well. We've done our due diligence in that regard, that we are making sure. That's why geolocation is a big thing. That's why that had to be implemented. Thanks to our French connection with Davidson Consulting, was one of their biggest pet peeves. Was like, hey, if we want to use your stuff, you need to have this. Otherwise, we can't use it. Simply as that. We cannot use it because then we're in breach. They could use it, but then they're the one breaching the GDPR compliance thing. So we have to make sure that at that point we're protecting us, our providers, and of course our consumers.
Now, Davey, if the end user, for whatever reason, the app they deployed is storing their personal information, they've inputted their personal information, isn't the onus now on the node operator to address right to be forgotten?
No. You're wrong there. If for starters, we don't ask personal information.
Ever.
Correct.
Even in a fire.
No, correct, but there's still that chance that the end user inputted it. Right.
And
I'm not saying on Flux, but on the actual deployed application.
But then the deployer of that application is at fault.
Yeah. If you accidentally put your private key into something that you're not supposed to, you're going to be in trouble. So I mean, it does take some user awareness on that.
If I put
so we're saying the onus is on the user to wipe the app, essentially.
Yeah, like if I put my private keys in a Google Doc and I put it in Google, and I all of a sudden I lose my access to my Zalcore and all of my funds are gone, and I wonder why. Well, I put it in a Google Doc. There is a chance that can be taken. Like you're always, a perfect example of that is medical data, right? if I'm a receptionist and I'm sitting typing at my desk with a waiting room full of patients, and the patient who's standing in front of me is asking, hey, this is my data, blah blah, and I turn my monitor at her and I say, hey, is this correct? And I'm basically showing all the data to every patient in the room. Who's at fault? The operator, the one who's doing the action. He's the one at fault, not the monitor provider, not the software provider, not the clinic. Well, the clinic somewhat because of the person that they hired is
The employer is
being an idiot.
But yeah.
But that's where HIPAA compliance, for instance, comes into play. We have certain things to do on our end, right? Geolocation, making sure we're open about it, who's running our stuff. We've done all of that piece. But if I make a website and I don't put any security pieces in play, I don't encrypt any data, and then I go to OVH, I go to Amazon, I go to Lumen, I go wherever I want. I go to Bob at the corner of the street and I host my website on his computer. At that point, that data can be available to anybody. So you have to be careful with.
Time out, Davey. I've got I got a hard stop. I got like 5 minutes.
I can keep going on this.
Is there any last questions you guys want to ask us before we head out?
Yeah, we can run through them pretty quick. Great, King.
Oh, you guys have a list?
Yeah.
Big list?
Let me run through the QA one real quick, King.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the next question I have is, at a high level, can you speak to what your current QA process is for Flux OS changes? And also, do you perform any type of regression testing?
Yeah, so there are multiple components to FluxOS, right? We have the daemon, benchmark, FluxOS itself. The daemon has regression testing, but FluxOS is sort of automated in a way that we have an extensive test suite, right? That covers most functions, the entire logic. So additionally, there is a development branch. So before something enters production, it goes on development network. So there are about 100 nodes on the network that run development branch. That's basically the biggest QA, right? When in real world we test the new upcoming changes that are being released, plus like normal code reviews. That's the development
and
process
the test
and release
network
process
as well.
Yeah,
test network and a change review process, the whole 9 yards. So this looks more like a standard, the deployment process looks like the standard technology stack. Like, you know what I mean? We're not doing Patch Tuesday, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. So is Cirrus gonna kind of leverage? Is Cirrus gonna allow kind of the end user node ops to, not the end user, sorry, the node ops to kind of run their own tests during the development lifecycle?
I always say the Cirrus nodes are the world's biggest test net, but it actually does something, right? So you deploy a Cirrus node with little effort, beat it up, figure out how to do it, and then you want to move up to the big boys. Then you move into Cumulus, Nimbus, and Stratus.
But moving forward, once Cirrus is fully rolled out, will your QA pipeline deploy to those Cirrus nodes?
There's
two things during testing windows.
There's two things here.
I think,
Mike. Sorry, Dan.
Yeah.
Mike, you're talking about an application running now.
Correct. Yes.
So that's different than what we were talking about a second ago. So a second ago we were talking about FluxOS QA and the rollout of that.
Mm-hmm.
But for applications, there's two things. At the moment, because Cirrus is not available yet, with the enterprise implementation that we just put in, you can actually decide what IP addresses you want to run it on. So if you have your own nodes running at this very moment, you can literally put those IP addresses in and run your application just on yours, so you can do your testing and validating as you want. And to this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can use a testnet too.
You can use test deploy. So before you actually spawn the application, you can test deploy the application on one particular node. So not complex like multiple instances, but one particular node will be selected to run your application as a test for an hour. So.
All right.
Does that answer your question somewhat, Mike? I hope it does.
Yeah, we can. You know what, Davey? Let's talk about it at Mining Disrupt because I do have some questions.
I'm all
but we
available
can-
there, man.
Yeah, we can.
3
we can
days
talk about
long.
it there. Perfectly fine.
Yeah, and if you guys have questions that we want to share back with the community, King, are you going to Mining Disrupt?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
we can do a live stream right there and take additional questions. I mean, we're more than happy to do that. I'll be there. Davey will be there. A bunch of the team will be there.
Yeah. As a decentralized cloud provider, what compliance audits have you guys passed? The NIST, the CSA, and SOC, HIPAA.
My alarm goes off.
HIPAA is
That's
always
medical. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's medical and it's specific to the end users. Well, the end users who are deploying the applications, not the end users that are using it. So you have to look at those compliance data. That we're building toward those. We're not interested in getting certified in them because really we're a completely different animal than say an AWS is in terms of we're an open source project. So I would say you have to remember that some of those are base level. And Davey, if I'm speaking out of turn here, correct me. But these are base level. So like especially with HIPAA, it's how the data is handled and gathered. And that's not us. We're running infrastructure, so it's going to be up to if
again,
if an
we have
EMR,
a role to play. We have a role to play. We are compliant with that. And the role to play is that geolocated Canadian data cannot move out of Canada. By the way, I've been in the field long enough. There's big providers who couldn't even provide that for a long time. They're starting to now, but we already have it. So geolocation, big piece of that. And then the other pieces that you said, what was it? The CSA
And SOC.
And SOC. Okay. We're like Dan says, we're trying to be as compliant as possible to all of these as we can. The problem is that we're in a decentralized world and we're not in a centralized world. So we're already fighting the narrative about the decentralization piece to it. So, well, yes, we are trying to be as compliant as we can. I don't think I haven't asked, but I don't know if we've done a recent run of it to see if we're still in full compliance.
Yes, well, it's ongoing, and that'll be what your next question about audits. The one thing we did is when we started looking at the auditing process, we started looking at the major audit companies, and they really didn't understand how we work. So what we did is we hired 3 internal people that basically do the same thing. So all of our audits are done internally at this particular point, and eventually we'll publish an ongoing audit log, so to speak. But because we're in a disruptive technology, we just don't look like and spending $100,000, $200,000 on a audit. It just doesn't make sense to us. We'd rather have the resources that monitor it constantly and develop the infrastructure around it perpetually. So, I know you were going to ask about that, so I just figured I'd throw that out there.
You beat me to the punch. Yeah, I guess another one would be is how often are penetration and vulnerability tests conducted, or have there
all
been
the flipping time, all the time. And the nice thing about Flux being open source like that is if there's people out there that want to do that, do it. We highly recommend you beat the shit out of it. You know what I mean? That's exactly what we want because we can't make this a superior product without ongoing pen tests. And we have a wonderful bug bounty process. We also, have a CVE set up as well. So, we're always constantly looking to make sure security is priority number 1. So, but part of that comes with the community, and several of the bugs that have been found in Flux were from white hat hackers who went out and beat the shit out of it and said, hey, this might be a problem. You might want to look at it. So, I mean, when you're dealing with this, when you're dealing with disruptive technologies, the more hands you have working to perfect it, and that's community based, and the quicker the product becomes solid and we solidify our spot in the marketplace.
Mike, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, I was going to say, if Dan needs to go, we can wrap up and we can reconvene at Mining Disrupt, do a part 2.
I don't trust to leave Davey alone. I'm afraid he'll tell you a whole bunch of shit that we're not supposed to tell anybody. No, I'm just kidding.
Says the one who leaks the most.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. I appreciate. I'm going to drop then, guys. I'll let these
Okay.
guys finish it out.
Okay.
And thanks for having us on today. I appreciate it. And
thanks, Dan.
let's get together. Yeah, let's get together at Mining Disrupt. Anybody that's listening to this, if you have questions, awesome. Let's get them together, and we'll make sure we answer them. So thank you, guys, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Hey,
Thanks for your time, Dan.
Have a good
Appreciate
one.
it. All right. Can you want to? You still want to run through the rest of the list, or?
Sure. Yeah. Let's do it here. Here's a good one. Will Linux security and security updates and kernel updates be something that you guys are going to mandate moving forward? As I mean, I will also, I'm also, not one that always updates my Linux as well, but so are many other people, right?
Everybody does.
Yeah.
Let's be very honest here. I think if nobody forces you, you don't touch it, right? If it runs, it runs. Don't touch it. We're all in IT, but one of the things that one of my previous managers, very good guy, he made us do patching every month in a medical environment, which is stressful. And I hear you, and I've been knocking on the door within internally as well on making sure we do the Reddit benchmarks. I want to actually see something added, and at one point we'll definitely do that. Today, correct me if I'm wrong. At this point, we don't, or we do.
At this point, no. Right now, the security of each node is kind of given to the node operator himself. Right? So they are the ones responsible for maintaining the security of their Linux distribution. But yeah, we will introduce some standardized checks on package versions of some important packages in our benchmark process, but it's a couple months ahead.
Okay. Interesting. The Flux network is secured by node operators, right? Which have different networking equipment and obviously different networking skills. Is Flux concerned with the network security of their operators and their customers based on these different levels of network security, right? Because everybody, people host on all different types of equipment. You know what I mean? It could be a T-Mobile hotspot that they got going. You know what I mean? If it has the sufficient bandwidth to meet your benchmark requirements, right? But as far as for the end operator, as far as being a vulnerability, right? That T-Mobile hotspot router is not going to offer very good security for either the operator or potentially the node or the DApp or application that will be hosted on his node, right? So I was just trying to get a feel for that, or if you guys are concerned with that at all.
Yeah, I would say no, because we can't look at a single node, right? What we care is the overall network status. Like the pieces, the individual nodes of the Flux OS do not make any security checks or do not secure the network at all. Like the Flux network is secured by proof of reasonable work. Like miners mine blocks, and that's how the Flux network is secured, right? So the Flux nodes themselves do not contribute to blockchain security. From the application standpoint, we should again look at the overall network, right? Because the application is distributed on multiple nodes. So they do not rely on a single node. In fact, the entire system is like designed to be redundant, right? So failing or misbehaving nodes are just like natural part of Flux network. And you can find them, right? We have a few, maybe 100 nodes that are misbehaving. That are not
and we've seen it to this, right? Yeah, with WordPress, with the WordPress implementation. And people ask me, why is WordPress still in beta? Well, as we rolled it out, we noticed a couple things. One of the things that we noticed, for instance, was literally this question. People finding a way around certain network requirements that we had, and basically faking and making it to get the nodes up and running. Bandwidth limitations that were circumvented and all that, and we discovered that. We had our suspicions, well, more than suspicions, but we weren't as we weren't always enforcing it. So we started enforcing it. There's still players out there, and you always have to weigh out the importance of it, right? So if how needed is it to put a lot of folks on that to figure out a solution on that versus is it something we can work around easily? But with WordPress, what I had, for instance, was I had my website running. My main node went down for somebody doing maintenance on it. Totally fine. So I moved it over to the different node, and that node was not playing nicely in the sandbox. And unfortunately, that node kind of alluded to something, and we fixed it with the benchmarking. A lot of that happens consistently, but we're not going to tell you you have to use MikroTik, or to jab at you there, Miking. How's that going? By
Yeah,
the way,
there you go. I like it.
Or you have to use Cisco or a TP Link or Starlink from our friend.
I guess what I was getting at with that
Yeah.
question is the network security of the actual node operator themselves,
It's on the
because
node operator again, isn't it? Like
Oh, okay.
if you don't do anything to your network, even if you're not running a node, I would be worried.
Yeah.
I mean, but adding the node to your network though,
It opens
and
you up easily. I get it. Like adding you that node, but that again, we
Well,
as
you
an individual,
you
you have
chose to run the node on your network, right?
Yeah, like
So
that's
you
what
are
I'm saying
required
too.
to
Like,
have the skill to run it. You can
well,
run it in data center, right? Or on some VPS where it's more expensive, right? But they take
that's
care
what
of
you
the
pay for. You pay
firewall
for that
and the
management.
networking for you.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's
At home
some,
networking too.
if you don't do it properly, you open yourself up for issues, not just on a node level, on anything we do. But you're the one who made the decision to start running it at home, which I encourage everybody to do. But if you're not if you're not as safe or you don't feel safe doing it, there is options out there that we offer as Flux. There's options that third providers provide to you, host nodes and Goldie, and there's a couple others that provide you services. You can go to a VPS provider. You can go to a data center and put your server there, your own server there, and run it there like the DSS. There's options out there, but if you have to do a little bit of research, and go ahead. I personally don't run any nodes at home anymore because I'm pretty open where I live, so it's easy to pinpoint on the map exactly where this guy lives. So I didn't do it anymore, but yeah, there's options out there. I use other options, and to fit my comfort levels. It's as simple as that.
so I guess this kind of leads in. We'll end off on this question.
Sure.
If in the future there was a data breach of, let's say, some sensitive information that was being stored on a node, and you can even, we'll say it's on my node, right? If that data, was compromised due to my network security, right? Would the node operator be liable for that, and for that data breach and have legal penalties?
That's a good question.
Because technically they're the one providing you the
It depends
security
on
and
the angle.
firewall.
Well, it depends on the angle too. Like if the data breach was because the application that somebody was running was just not secure at all, or the server was not secure at all. I don't know. I at this point I don't know what the. There's so many.
Yeah,
Right. Part
it
of the
also
onus
depends on
is on the end user for not encrypting it. Right. We've
Yep.
kind of covered
Yep.
that part, but you also have onus on the node op, right? Because
We're technically
they're
being a data
responsible for
center, right?
managing their
We're
own security,
offering services.
right? And they're the ones storing the data, technically.
What the,
It doesn't matter if there's a breach.
so if the data is easily accessible, again, that falls again on whoever was providing that software. If he didn't encrypt that data, then it literally was available to the entire world. Period. We can put up as many roadblocks as we want, and if there's not that many roadblocks, you still have the problem that the data is not encrypted. You have to put the roadblocks up on your end first, and then it's easy. If you didn't do the encryption piece, it's easy to point at whoever's providing you that thing. If you do that on a VPS today at any provider out there, and you don't put any firewall rules in place, you literally do UFW allow, and you have it wide open, and you don't do any proper you don't do any security pieces to it, at that point it's again on you. Doesn't
Yeah.
this we use UFW, right?
Yes. Oh, well, we do not. We advise node operators to use it, right? But they don't have to set it up, right? They can just disable UFW if they didn't use the installation script of Node, where it comes with that. But it's up to the node owner himself.
Yeah, like if you as a node operator literally just say UFW allow everything, at that point you open yourself up again, not just for the data piece to it, but you open yourself up for everything else. You have to do a certain due diligence on your end as well. But even if I'm an end user and I use something on a regular provider today and I don't put any security pieces into it, again, you're opening yourself up. The word I'm looking for is common sense, right? You put, if you want to run nodes, do your due diligence, please. Don't just follow a script, done, walk away, and never look back. This is not your node. This is not your the product you want to be engaged in. You have a responsibility to do. If you don't do it properly, there is ownership at that point that you have to own up to. It's as simple as that. You need to make sure you do your due diligence as a node operator, and it's really simple. It's really simple.
So technically, then, if the end user did encrypt their data, and it was say lack of, we'll say it was the node operator, who had, we'll say, not a properly configured firewall or improper configuration of a firewall, that they would end up being liable then.
Well, the firewall is not the issue here. Is you as the owner of the node, if you don't set it up proper to begin with, if you open yourself up for other issues too. Not just the data breach, you open your entire network open.
Right,
at that
to
point.
DDoS and all kinds of other
DDoSing,
horribles.
all the fun stuff that comes with it. You're a system administrator. You have to use common sense. Period. But I do believe that we have UFW enabled, by the way, on our end with the scripts that we have.
Yes, we do use UFW heavily, but I would say Flux is decentralized public network, right? It's the internet. When somebody puts some data on the internet, they can just press undo, right? And moreover, it's a blockchain, right? So when you put something on Bitcoin, right? You put some transaction on Bitcoin, you cannot undo the transaction, and the same is on Flux, right? So if you submit some data to Flux, moreover to application specifications, right, then there is no undo button, right? But from the node operator perspective, it depends on the jurisdiction, right? Me sitting here in Indonesia, I'm quite happy, right? But if there is some breach, it's difficult to say from which node it originated, right? And how to point the bridge to this specific node, to this IP address, because that's quite tricky task to actually do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there?
Simple things, passwords, usernames. You make it easy for somebody to get into it. Come on, I'm not even gonna defend you. Simple. If you do password 123 4, even on your, it's common sense. You don't do it on your regular computer either, right? You just wanna. You have to be cognizant as a system administrator that you have some ownership as well. That I'm not gonna protect you in that. I really am not. If you mess it up that way, you're literally on your own. You have a certain obligation as well, and that goes for everybody. That goes for it. We can put all the roadblocks in as we want. We can put guides out. We can put videos out. We can go on streams like this or on videos like this, but you still have your own responsibility too. You cannot hide by behind somebody else as a person yourself. And if you want to do a provider role like this, you have an ownership. You always have an ownership. It's as simple as that.
Well,
I hope that makes sense. I don't know how you
yeah, it
guys feel
does.
about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it does.
Meineke, you're in the hosting business itself.
I am. I
So
am.
what do you do what you try to protect your customer base, right?
Right. Exactly. Well,
Well,
I
what
appreciate
if
you
you
guys.
don't?
What if I don't? Yeah, yeah, it's
You
bad then.
It's bad. It's
Yeah.
let's keep it at that. It's bad. You lose face, whatever. But it we can help with folks again, and I go all the way back to the beginning of the conversation. If you're not certain about it or you have questions, uh, feel free to reach out, put support tickets in, reach out on Discord. Our support teams are on there as well. There's a community that can help you out with. Don't have them DM you and have them go on your server and set them up for you. Don't do that. There's other solutions out there. You can Titan participate. You can go on third provider services. You can go use VPSs. But even if if you use a VPS and you still don't put the necessary pieces in play, you still open yourself up for
Right, for
bad
vulnerabilities.
situations.
Right.
But that's for every type of node, right? Let's be honest. That's for every type of node out there. Any type of master node you do, if you run from another project a master node and you run it without any security pieces, that's not a Flux thing. That's for everybody out there who has that issue. If you want to run things at home, do your due diligence. That's all I can say.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming on today. I know we've taken up quite a bit of your time, but I always love having you on, Davey. It's always good conversation.
And we should do this Mind Disrupt as well, by the way.
Oh
Get a
yeah,
beer at least.
yeah. We're gonna have to get a few beers while we're down there. Definitely.
Sorry, you
thank
can't
you.
join us on there, man.
And is it Tadeus?
That's correct.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
And thank you again, Retro Mike. Is there anything you guys want to add from the Flux team? You guys want to add before we get out of here?
I know Dan can be very passionate. He was very passionate at the beginning of the conversation. It's our baby, right? So we commit a lot of time on this. This is my day today now. We are doing everything we can to make this appealing to enterprise solutions out there, regular users out there, students. Anybody should be able to use our network, and we're working hard on that every day. The developers are working hard on that every day, and I appreciate any video coming out, even if it's perceived by the community as an attack on us. It's not. I don't see it as an attack. I see it as criticism, and criticism, if formulated correctly, and it was in my book, it can help. It helps. It helps drive conversation. It helps discussions. That's why we're here. I love it. I love it. I had to think about it, and I didn't respond to it straight away. I didn't go to you straight away and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" No, I let it sit. I thought about it, I think I even went on Twitter and I even said it on Twitter. This was good feedback. Thanks for that. Timing wise, it was unfortunate. I'll keep it at that. But I'm happy we were able to answer some of the questions today. I don't know if we answered them good for you or not. I'll let you guys decide on that and discuss that amongst yourselves. But I'm happy to be able to answer some of the questions. I'm looking forward to Mining Disrupt, where we'll probably get more questions asked and follow-ups on this. By all means, send them our way. And if you have questions, head on our Discord, and I'm even there. I'll even answer them myself. So no, thanks for the opportunity to clarify a couple things, Mining King, Retro Mike. Appreciate it, and I'll see you guys on the streams.
Hey, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it. You guys have a good one. Thank you, Tobias and Davey. Thank you so much
Thanks for your time,
coming on
guys.
today.
No worries.
Hey,
Thank you, guys.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you as well.